What's up guys, it's your boy Christian back at it again with another video. Today I'm going to be breaking down the cinematic sequence that you just saw of the computer and when I built my computer a couple weeks ago. What I'm going to be doing in today's video is I'm going to break down shot by shot the sequence, my thought process when I shot it, and actually I'm going to explain and break down the gimbal techniques that I used. So let's get started with the first shot. So this shot is a very simple, it's just a dolly panning in shot. I stabilized it in post and then I added a little bit of extra scaling to get that speed that I wanted exactly. I think I was moving a little bit too slow in real time. But the way I got that shot was using the gimbal. I have the Ronin S here. I added this small rig handle because I have the Ronin S like neck clamp, I don't know what you'd call it, that gives me a couple different adapters or places to put adapters and shit here. And I have the handle just on the back here. And what I did for this shot was I was over my desk, so I couldn't have done it up and down like this because the gimbal was a little bit too long. I put it in flashlight mode, and using the handle I could have done this easily, but because to get a little bit more stability in the gimbal, because it is a little bit heavier, and since it's not in the center of gravity where I'm at, it's very hard to control it when I'm moving like this way. So the way I got this shot to be really smooth was I put the tripod part of the Ronin S under my armpit, and then with one of my thumbs on either my left hand or my right hand, whichever is more comfortable, I'm able to move the joystick and move the camera in a way that is kind of mimicking those robots that people use in commercials, like motorized precision essentially. That way I'm able to be really specific with the shots and I'm not relying on moving a specific way and the camera following my movement. I'm able to really dial in that specific shot. So what I did for this shot was I kind of just held it like this and then slowly panned in with my body. For this shot, I actually held the trigger, so I locked the camera. A big tip that a lot of people forget is you can lock your camera. When you press the trigger down, the camera isn't gonna move from the position it's been put in. That way, you're able to get really, really cinematic panning in and outs, or even side to side, or moving when you have those one shots where you're essentially doing this and you're panning like left to right. I don't know what those are called, like side to side dolly shots. If you know, let me know down in the comments, because I don't know. I just make up names for all this shit. But other than that, this shot was super simple. You could realistically even do it handheld. I tried to do it handheld, but it's not worth the time. Realistically, it's just easier to do with a gimbal. And then this shot was an interesting shot. What I wanted to try to do was I wanted to get it to kind of a silhouette, but I almost got there, and then you can see within the guts of the computer, the light and all that. So I thought it was a pretty interesting shot just to add a little bit of drama and see the other side of it. The way that this shot was made was it was just under, I was down and under my desk. And if you see the way that the shot goes is that I'm panning like kind of up or down. I don't exactly remember. I'm panning down. So like I'm backing out and then I'm panning down. So I'm getting like this rising effect. And in 120 frames, it looks dope as fuck. And essentially it goes back to the same thing that I was saying before, where you use the joystick and you're trying to get that motorized precision. So you're trying to move and you're trying to get the gimbal to move at relatively a very synchronized, you're trying to be synchronized and you're trying to get the exact flow where the shot looks good. Because if you're moving too fast or the camera's moving too fast, or meaning the gimbal, if one of them is moving too fast, then it's gonna look a little bit off. It's not gonna look super cinematic and flow the same way it's supposed to. So let's keep going. This shot was actually handheld. So this shot, I just grabbed the camera, and if you can imagine, this is the power supply. It's in the bottom left of the computer. I just went over the rail and just did a revealing shot. At 120 frames, you can hold the camera pretty much however you want. I know some people hold the camera by the neck, so they'll have like the lens here, and they'll just hold it like this and pan in. That way your elbows are in and your motion is as stable as it can possibly be. But yeah, this was just a handheld panning in shot. I really just wanted to try to get the focus between the RM850X throughout the whole thing. I didn't kind of achieve it, but it's whatever. It was a cool shot. And then this shot goes back to the exact same thing about motorized precision. I was just with the gimbal, it was on the table, and what I was doing essentially was I was panning to the right of it while moving to the left. That way it kept that kind of parallax effect where I'm moving to the left and the camera is moving to the right. So the thing is staying relatively within the same position in the frame, in almost bottom left, but it's moving within space. So it looks dynamic, and you can technically even add to those shots up and down. That's why some drone shots will look insane, because instead of just going one way, they're doing like a loop or some crazy like 3D shit, where in this case, going up and down at the same time would be even harder to get it all synchronized and work together. So it was an okay shot. I ended up speed ramping into the next shot. This shot, I've gotten a lot of people to ask me how it goes. This was a handheld shot, actually. And the way that it worked was I had the camera in my hand and I started at the edge of the case and I went all the way in past the focal point, because you can see that it goes actually past the Join the Republic. I cut it out, but it does go past. And then I just went in with the camera, and then while I was there, I would back out. So essentially you'd be getting 2 shots in 2 motions, you know? So I'm going in, maybe that shot is good, and then when I'm pulling out, I'd be able to reverse it in post. I actually think that this specific shot that I used was one that was reversed, and then, sorry, like I pulled back and then I reversed the shot. That's why it may look a little bit weird in the up and down at one point. I also put warp stabilizer on it, so maybe that's why as well. But that's the way that this shot was taken. It was kind of like an arc to make it look like you're going into the PC, like flying into it. And then yeah, you're essentially revealing it. It's something that Daniel Schiffer kind of has gone over into his handheld B-roll of how to really nail precision focus. Is just to start at the end and then do the reverse motion. I did that in the coffee sequence as well. It's a very, very handy tip. And you can even use that with the gimbal. I did it handheld, but you could use it with the gimbal too. This shot was cool because it was one of those shots where you just have like a top-down angle and the shot is just rotating. I rotated a little bit, but then what I ended up doing in post was scaling it and adding a little bit of extra rotation just to emphasize it a little bit more, and essentially just to have it pretty cool. If I was to go back, I'd try and make the light look a little bit more dynamic. That way it would look a little bit more interesting, but I think we did okay with this specific one. Up until here, we're still only using natural light, so we're not using any form of artificial light like a softbox or any smaller light. This shot was probably my favorite shot because of the lighting and the way that it reflects off of the Republic of the Gamers like logo. It just looks so, so sick. And the way that like the indent, or like not the indent, but the inside of the logo is black and then the outline is like glossy and then the other side is like matte. It looks really, really cool. I think this shot was actually one that was handheld as well, and it was reversed after. And then this shot was with a gimbal, I think. And it goes back to the same parallax effect where I put the CPU in the bottom right corner of the screen and I would pan to the right while keeping the CPU in the same spot. So the CPU would stay relatively in the same spot on the monitor and I'd rotate around it. And this one was speed ramped a little bit, but this is a very fast clip. And this was a gimbal shot as well. I was just going essentially with this one top down. So with this one, I was just doing this. And then when I would go, I would be pushing on the joystick up and then it would go like that. So just kind of like a revealing shot or a fading away shot, not really revealing, a dissolving shot? I don't know what you'd call it. Yeah, and then I ended up masking this. This mask is not my favorite mask. I've done better masks before. It was actually a really quick mask. I didn't want to spend too much time on it. I realized because you could see here on the left side, the computer doesn't cover the whole frame. I had a little bit of issues of deciding how to mask it exactly. I think it came out okay, especially when I scaled it a little bit more as you saw now. But I think it came out okay. It's not my favorite part of it, but it's whatever. But this shot is probably one of my favorite shots too, besides the Republic of Gamers logo shot. This shot was really cool because the light hits the Corsair top really nice. And then this this thing here in the boat, this bokeh thing is the case. It's the edge of the case. And essentially this one I did handheld, I think, or I used the gimbal. I think I might have used the gimbal and I just set the focus to manual focus. Same thing, same way I did it in the Republic of the Gamers logo. And I would move up alongside the rail, like the rim. So what I did essentially was, if you can imagine, like this is the edge of the computer, I would be going like in like this and trying to keep the foreground of the computer in the corner of the lens. That way you'd get a little bit of that bokeh, but it wouldn't be too much. And even if it was too much, you'd be able to scale. And like I said, I did this shot a couple times, so I had a couple of options to go from. But this one is a really cool shot for sure. And then this shot was actually handheld. It was the exact opposite of what I did with that other flying shot. With the first shot, I went from bottom right to top left of the case. This way, I went from bottom left into kind of like the middle. And I did this motion with the camera. Like I would have it cradled like this and I would just kind of go over it. But if you're able to quote unquote fall, you're able to get a second or half a second of really, really stabilized footage. And that's kind of what I did here. I obviously didn't fall into the computer, but it'd be that kind of dropping motion where you'd let your momentum carry you and you'd be able to, in a sense, almost mimic a glide cam of sorts and that same kind of falling and flying effect. But yeah, it was a very simple shot too. I think it was ended up being on 80 millimeters, not 80 millimeters, sorry, 75 millimeters on the Tamron, and just trying to get as smooth as I can over and over again, because at 75 millimeters, you're gonna get a lot of jitter. So it was a little bit of a harder shot to get, but definitely worth it in my opinion. And this was the one shot where I ended up using one artificial light. I'll let you guess where it was. It was here in the bottom right corner of the shot, and it was this small aperture light that is really, really dope. I don't remember the exact type it is, but it's the one with the metal back. But otherwise, this shot was also handheld. This one was from the down angle. It was, I think, around 35 millimeters or something like that. A little bit in the middle on the 28 to 75. And it was just a left to right panning shot. Very, very simple. I just kind of wanted to get one shot where it was all kind of put in and built. But again, another very, very, very simple shot. If you notice a pattern here, I'm using very simple techniques with a couple complex techniques just to kind of give a versatility within all the different shots. That way, it's a lot more interesting to look at, and it's not the same types of shots, same types of pans, same types of tilts and whatever. It's a lot more interesting. I think I've said that a couple times. So this one shot is actually a very cool shot. This goes back to what I mentioned before as the triple axis shot, where I'm moving up, I'm panning down to the right, to the left actually, sorry, and I'm able to get all three motions. So essentially the way that this shot would work is I'd be going up and then I'd be panning down as well. So it would be kind of something like this. The angle that you want to go over the subject is very much upon your choice and the vibe that you're trying to get. So if you're trying to imagine like a phone, if you go right over the phone, it's kind of like a thing of dominance, you know, like you're going right over something, maybe you're trying to really expose something, that type of thing. If you're going from a 45, it's a lot more complementing that angle. Whereas if you go from the side, it's a totally different perspective. So definitely when you're trying to pull one of these shots out, keep in mind the different degrees that you do the shot at is gonna be very different and will change the way that your shot's gonna look. So try a couple out, see which one works best for you, and see which one works best for the situation that you're in. This one was these ending ones were all gimbal shots, by the way, and this one was a very simple to the right panning shot. There wasn't much going on here. I just wanted to show off the cooler and the fan. And this shot was something that I was going for as more of like a top-down, not really top-down, but like a top-down perspective where I'm looking down into the case. And then this shot was doing in the same motion. So if you notice, both shots kind of complement each other and go into the same motion, not like one is turning to the right and the next one is turning to the left, unless I'm wrong. Yes, I am right. I'm good at my job. But yeah, make sure you have that fluidity. It really, really adds to the video and to the cinematicness. And then this shot was the exact same shot as the other two, or the very first shot of the cooler. Very basic panning shot. I actually even got a little bit of up and down movement on this one. I think I did that in post with keyframes, but a very simple shot. One thing I did want to mention was initially when I first rendered the sequence out, I had this shot before the other two shots. And it was kind of like, oh, this is the computer and then these are the individual parts. But it just looked very off, especially with the very last shot that you saw, how that kind of ties in together. So it looked a lot better when I had the individual components first and then showed off the final kind of setup and then showed off the case at the end. So just keep that in mind, that maybe sometimes you want to show components of something that you're trying to showcase, and then you show off the full thing. And you'd be able to kind of keep that mystery if you don't show it all at the beginning, because then people are looking at the individual components and they're trying to put it together in their mind, when by the time they get there, you show them what it is and they're probably blown away by it, because we're all shooting cool shit, right? But let's move on. This shot was a little bit harder to get actually, because the way that this one worked was I was a little bit down, had a little bit of a downward angle, and I was just moving left to right, but I was moving left to right at the same time I was moving up and down. So I was trying to get this types of shots where I was moving down and kind of panning from one part of the case to the other and moving along with it. So it would be something where it'd be like this. So it's kind of like a spiral, like one of those pastas that you can imagine, one of those spiral pastas. And this shot was a little bit harder because the timing was really hard to get. I use this one technique that I use a lot of times, and what I do is I overcompensate with the gimbal, right? So I'll overcompensate, let's say to the left with this gimbal, to the left, and then I'll start moving the gimbal and then I'll start moving. That way I've already got one plane of motion going, and then I start on the next plane of motion, and then I'll start the clip somewhere in the middle there. So the clip starts when the motion is already happening. It's not like I start the clip right when it's still and then the motion happens, right? You already want to be in a very good state of flow and movement before you get to the beginning and the end of your shot. That's, I think, a pretty big key to some of these things, is maintaining that movement and that angle before you get into the sweet spot of where you want to be, and then maintaining that through your entire shot. It's kind of like a follow through in basketball, if you can imagine, right? Like yeah, let's talk about basketball. Other than that, that's pretty much the video in itself. It's a pretty cool little edit. It was about 37 seconds. I thought it was gonna end up being a little bit shorter, but it was pretty nice and nifty, a little fun thing to do. I didn't include some stuff just because I was building it at the same time and I was trying to pay attention not to mess up anything. But even then, I think I included some of the more interesting things and just kind of showcased the computer as a whole. But if I was to give you guys one last piece of information before I left, it would be to practice. You definitely have to practice with the gimbal if you want to get proficient and you want to get good at it. You have to know how the gimbal moves, you have to know how the gimbal will react to different movement, and how you're going to be able to use it when you're in the field. So when you're at home, or when you're doing nothing, essentially, because we all have those kind of periods, try and practice when you're in your house. 10 minutes a day, maybe 30 minutes a day, maybe every other day, a couple times a week. Just film random stuff around your house. Maybe your family, maybe your friends, like start tracking them. Obviously don't track random people, that'd be a little bit weird. But you're definitely gonna need to practice if you wanna get really good with the gimbal. That's what I tell everybody. You have to practice. That way you're gonna learn for yourself the different kind of nitty gritty ways that the gimbal moves, and what looks good and what doesn't look good, and what complements and what doesn't complement. So as a whole, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. As always, hit that like button if you liked the video, subscribe if you're new. It's your boy Christian, and I'll catch you next time. Peace, guys.